So let's start with a definition. What are agents, right? So there's a lot of different probably terms out there, but probably industry is coalescing around a few of these as well. Agents fundamentally have agency, right? Meaning they take decisions, they plan, they decide, and they're taking some kind of an action in your systems. Could be some kind of a transactional state that it's altering, or it could be sending a particular sort of update on a sales order, saying it's changed from a particular state to another state, and so on. And they have various degrees of autonomy, of course, right? So you can also have humans in the loop, and we do encourage that. We'll see that in the product itself. It's baked into the product. And for big decisions, for things that are very impactful, it is important. There was an incident, if you might have seen the news, last week, I think it was, a code writing agent basically wiped out a database at a company, an entire set of database. They did roll it back, I believe, but the details are, it's interesting that it was able to actually take such an action. I was actually surprised that they didn't have any further guardrails on it. And we do put a lot of guardrails on our sort of agents. So there is something that you need to kind of think about. And that's kind of example of that. We do keep seeing that in the industry. Because they do interpret user goals and decide what to do, right? And the more sophisticated reasoning agents, we'll talk about the varieties of agents that you have. Not every agent is really doing the reasoning. There are ones which are more simpler, kind of completion type agents and summarization and things like that, which are not really altering the state per se. They are not probably calling tools or APIs in some cases, but in many cases they do, if you wanted to really do some autonomous function. They do connect to enterprise business data, of course, for context. Otherwise, they cannot do the work. You can, of course, provide the context in various ways, and we'll talk about that. You can provide it in the prompt. You can use tools, extract information, and provide it, and so on. So that's kind of what agents are in our definition. And by and large, I think it matches what industry talks about. They do have memory, they can reason, and they can act. Right? That's the foundation. So with Fusion AI agents, we have built them natively into the Fusion platform. And these are, when I say native, they are very role aware. So each agent is given a particular, is sort of rather authorized to be used by users who have a particular role which is defined through the security mechanisms and so on, which are usually available in Fusion anyway. They are there for your Fusion applications, the same user roles and all the powers that role is vested with now can be tied to the agents as well. So this wouldn't have happened if, like for instance, that agent going and wiping out a database, that would not have happened if that agent was, I think, basically role aware, essentially, right? Because that would have had that power to do it. And we built it in such a way that you cannot really go and operate outside of that, whatever that role definition is. And these role definitions are very strict, and they've already been defined in the Fusion system. You're already used to it because you're using them in the Fusion applications. And so it comes natively with that. And the same thing for data access. So the role is very tied to that particular set of data, saying, okay, this particular person can access this data and this particular person cannot access this data, because let's say somebody is a manager, then they can access their group's data. As a HCM, you'll see examples of that. Shah will come and talk about it later on. But at the same time, they cannot access other groups' data like a manager in their system and so on. But if it's let's say it's benefits, you're asking about your benefits, you should be able to ask about only your benefits and whatever your payroll is, what taxes you're paying, and so on and so forth, and not anybody else's. So every agent is very role aware and operates in that bound. So that automatically brings together security and there's also auditability as well. There's audit capabilities so that we know what the agent did, which agent did what, and who was operating, and so on and so forth. Right? So all of those come natively aware with the Fusion platform. So it's not really bolted on from outside saying, oh, I need to be aware of this and I need to provide all these functions or guardrails from a security standpoint to the agent, but it's really built into the system. It's built into the agent. So that's what makes the agent development sort of easy for Fusion apps when you're using our platform. That's kind of the fundamental benefit of it. And you can build it all using Agent Studio. You'll see a lot of. So we try to categorize the agents into three types: authoring, answering, and action agents. And they can all be assembled using the Agent Studio. So authoring agents are very kind of simple. You'll see some examples of it again. They've been around for a while. They're embedded natively into the workflow of Fusion apps. It's like typically you're generating a summary, or you generate this email based on this context, and so on and so forth, or generate a subject line even, whatever the case may be. They're usually prompt completion type use cases. They're fairly simple, and they're not really reasoning kind of agents, right? They're not really calling many other tools and so on. They're fairly simple. They're simple to test. They're simple to build. They're simple to incorporate. And we've incorporated a lot of them, and they come out of the box with the Fusion platform, with the Agent Studio and Agent platform. And those are included for customers. They can get value out of the box immediately. Answering agents definitely do more things. They take into account, let's say, some document that you're providing, some business object related that has data in it. You're extracting that from the system, and you're providing it to the large language model to essentially provide you some kind of an advice or guidance or answer a question. Usually, could be a contract, could be a benefits document, could be something that you're analyzing, essentially, right? Anything that's in a document. And in fact, we use this to produce that previous certification, the first draft of the quiz, I said. Like we provided the agent with a lot of our internal material, and said, if this is the material, and we wrote a long prompt to it, and so on, then these are the kinds of, can you generate some questions? So in that case, it went beyond. We're not just asking a question off of material in the document, but we asked it to generate as well. So it's a combination of the first two. So that is kind of interesting. So you could kind of use the material, but don't go outside the bounds of it. It probably did a little bit in some places, but then that's when the human in the loop comes in the picture, and we curate it to produce the final set. Action agents are the most kind of complex ones, and our platform allows you to build really any degree of complexity. And here, our general advice and guidance, and JT will talk about it, and others will talk about it too, is to start small. You can start with a single agent team. We have a concept called an agent team. We'll talk about that. Or multiple agents, agents which are chained up, or agents which are in a supervisor or worker pattern. There are different patterns that can be used. And they're for various purposes. As you build more agents, just like with any other software, you'll get more and more kind of comfortable with it, and you'll figure out which agent pattern matches which kind of a workflow you're trying to impact, and so on. And these types of agents typically use tools. The tools within tools are, you're using something, you're calling a function within your system. In Fusion, you're using some kind of a business objects, a combination of them, and you're retrieving data, you're really calling some function to do certain work. It can be simple things too. You can be using a calculator tool to calculate something. You're adding up a bunch of numbers from the last 1 year or whatever it is. You could be using a calculator tool. You could be using a document tool to embed a document into the system and do some decisions or question answering based on it. So you can use a variety of tools within the actioning kind of agents framework to get things done, right? That's where agents are getting more sophisticated. They're taking some kind of an action on your behalf. And it's not, and you can mix and match too. You can have some of the other agents which are doing simple answering or authoring within that larger sort of agent team, which is also taking an action based on something that's happening or some question that was answered and the answer was returned and so on. So authoring agents, as I said, they kind of embed a functionality powered by a large language model into your workflow. So typically there's a workflow and we've already enabled a lot of these things into the application experience. And it could be, hey, generate a summary of this service request, generate a summary of this exchange that happened, could be emails, could be anything, right? And usually it's very embedded in that, and it uses the data within the context of that. Particularly, it's not really going out of bounds anywhere. It's really using it in the workflow. And you can provide a prompt to it, and we've provided many prompts. If you're coding it up, then of course you can provide a prompt and instructions on what to say, what not to say, and so on. So there's all that instructions it can take. And we use a variety of LLMs. You have the ability to switch large language models, by the way, in Agent Studio. And we host a few of them, Llama and Cohere, and increasingly more as well. We'll talk about it in the roadmap as well. We are host in OCI. We have started to host Grok from xAI and so on. And we're also connecting to OpenAI now. So that goes externally. The model is outside OCI, of course, but we connect to it, and you can swap it if you want. And but depends on the type of agent and so on. You should sometimes you don't need kind of a much larger, more sophisticated model for a simpler case like authoring use cases. So we've tested it. We put it by default. We use Cohere's model for a lot of these completions. It's very good. It's fast. It does the job. But if you prefer something else, you can always go and swap it. That's always possible. You can also bring your own large language model, and that capability is coming as well. So there's a variety of things that you can do with that. If you think that your model is much better for some reason and you want to bring it, then yes, we will provide that capability. We are supporting some integrations where out of the box there, but you can do that swapping as well. So these are fairly simple kind of in the workflow applications that do the task. And examples are, numerous examples are there. From human resources, for instance, it could be about goal setting. If you're writing, for instance, next year's goals, you had some rough draft somewhere, but your organization expects the goals to be drafted in a particular way. Maybe there's a template to it. You could always ask it to kind of match that tone and generate the goals based on whatever you did. Or you could write up a very rough draft and ask it to elaborate on that, and so on. It could be creating job postings too, job descriptions and so on. It could give a very rough description, generate the job description. Things like that are already very possible and likely being used in many organizations across. Sales, service, marketing, there's numerous examples that are there. Some of our CX colleagues will come and talk about that. Email authoring, landing page authoring, or generating subject line and things like that. They've become very sort of common, very kind of easy as well. Those are the perfect tasks for a language model because they're very good at language, right? And service requests summarization is one of my favorites too. It makes life easier. You have a large set of conversation that happened in a service request. Maybe a complaint came in. You just want a quick summary of it. Then bingo, you have all of those available, built into the flow of work, many places, and you can use that. Right? in supply chain and there's a lot of, again, summarization. You can draft a sales or draft an order confirmation email, for instance, based on a particular order, generation of all of those kinds of things. So there is a variety of things in any industry, any vertical you pick, any pillar you pick. There's numerous examples of these kinds of agents that are possible. Now we have a second type of agent, which is answering, like I said, typically for provides responses using a particular document, your knowledge base, your help articles, any of these things. We're all familiar with it, I think, RAG-based, essentially, retrieval augmented generation. So again, we use a variety of LLMs for this. You can swap things if you want. Llama tends to be pretty good from the ones that we host. Llama 3.3, 70 billion is what is behind this currently. But again, that could change as Llama 4 matures and that comes in. We'll take a look, and we're constantly evaluating LLMs that are coming out and ones that we are hosting as well on OCI. Again, you can swap and change it to OpenAI if you want, but a lot of time there are some implications of that from what we call custom AI and how tokens are counted and so on and so forth. So we can talk about that separately. Here, the answers are grounded, obviously, within that particular context that you provide. And we are building more and more tools for helping you understand, how is it within that context, or is it grounded in it? Is it faithful to the context, or is it doing something else outside of that bounds and so on? So there's more evaluation capabilities coming up. We're actively, that's part of the roadmap. And even when documents are provided to agents in the RAG context, there is a chance and scope for hallucination. It can definitely go and make up something, especially if it's large documents and so on. So it's definitely good to flag that. And so that's not a problem that's gone away. It's the nature of these models itself. Models do predict the next token. So by nature, they are a prediction machine. The hallucination is just a byproduct of it. It's just when the prediction kind of goes wrong. It's like, we don't take it seriously when, or rather you could sometimes, if the weather prediction goes wrong, I mean, it could be off by some, and that is also a prediction, right? So this is kind of no different in some sense. It's predicted the wrong token, or if it did not have the context, it made it up. So that's the creative part of that model, essentially. So you can play around with the temperature and other things like that to control for it, but it'll never go away. That's the very nature of this models. Models have generally gotten pretty good at instruction following and kind of adhering to what you say. So it also depends on how well your prompt is crafted. And I think JT will get into a lot of prompts and topics and how do you provide enough detail to keep them all kind of bounded and guarded. We've also experimented a lot with variety of these models in the sense that with various prompts and with loose amount of instructions or very tight instructions and so on. It all depends on the model too. So Llama tends to require a lot more sort of preciseness and kind of specificity in your instructions. And OpenAI models tend to be a little more sort of, I guess you could, for lack of a better word, robust, if you will, meaning you can be a little less specific and still kind of maybe get away with it. But being more specific is always something good, and that'll give a more clear instruction. So there are differences in the models as well. If you swap a model, then that means that you'll also have to look at the prompt, because each of the models expects the prompts in a different, interprets the prompts in a different way. So that's the burden also that you have. There are many examples of these. For instance, payslip agent, benefits agent, leave absence agent. You'll see examples of it later on in the day. A lot of times I found myself too, you've signed up for benefits in November or whatever it is your company does, and you've forgotten what you've signed up for, or you don't remember what exactly what you're eligible for and so on, and what is covered, what is not. So you obviously want to upload a benefits document, and this makes life easier. You can just ask a question and then it'll answer it from the document, right? You can, of course, go and read the document and do all of that, but this is much more easier to do it. Leave and absence agent, a lot of times, if your organization or some customers might have a very complex leave and vacation policies, and depending on your tenure and all of that sort of stuff, then that's available to ask those kind of questions too. These are really useful for all employees, essentially. Some of them are useful for only some people who are in that role. Obviously, they're role specific, but some are like for all employees. The human resources ones, mostly human capital management ones, HCM ones, are all kind of fall into the all employee kind of bucket, more or less. Knowledge search agent is one of my favorites as well. You can have 2 or 3 knowledge articles, you retrieve them based on a customer's complaint or a service request. Then you use that to answer a particular question. It may have already been answered, or you're searching for answers which are related to that. You're also trying to match up sometimes the current case with a maybe historical one that has been resolved. And this answer agents tend to be very good at that, because then you can compare 2 different documents, and it's doing essentially a vector plus keyword hybrid search behind the scenes. Just in case it's not clear, vector search is more based on semantic similarity, not just the keyword matching and keyword similarity. So in the vector space, the document is converted to what's called a vector space, which is basically a higher dimension number of set of numbers, which is what the machine understands. That's because the language model behind it has an understanding of the language in that case and what 2 different things mean. So a word play could mean a play or a theater and drama in one place, and play could mean playing in a playground in one other case. Depends on the context. So the semantic meanings are judged, and it'll return usually some kind of a similarity number. It's not usually using keyword. You still should use keyword search, and that's what we do. We do use a combination of it, because if you're looking for specific part numbers, specific, let's say, job requisition numbers, that's not something meant for semantic search, because that's you want to match the exact keyword there. You want to be precise in the keyword matching. But you also want semantic matching when you're really comparing 2 paragraphs. Are these 2 basically same in meaning, roughly same in meaning? How similar are they? That's not a keyword search kind of paradigm. It's more of a vector search paradigm. So you do need both. And that's what we do. We combine the 2 and use it at the back. In case you're curious, what we do is when you transform these text into vectors in behind the scenes, we are using embedding models. Cohere's embedding models are what are powering the RAG-based search. You've got action. Now you come to the more higher end or more sophisticated we're getting in more and more complex kind of agents. Here, you are really looking to automate some kind of a end-to-end process. It could be your recruiting process, your quote to requisition kind of a process, and so on, or something in sales, something in customer service, and so on. You're going beyond just the summarization. You're going beyond just the answering a particular set of questions. You are really trying to do multiple tasks here, or maybe it's a team of agents which is answering a bunch of questions. It could be any of them. Maybe it's distributing the task and figuring out which agent to call for what task. So there are varieties of patterns here, but you're essentially trying to take some kind of an action and using some kind of a tool, which is could be a calculator tool, could be calling some APIs. You could be doing web search, or you could be doing search externally in some other data source to retrieve some content and then act on it. So it could be a variety of things, right? And It does generate plans. I mean, the model here, it meaning the large language model, generates a plan, and the agent is using to execute it within the guardrails of what you've provided. So it does use a prompt, obviously. It does use what are called topics. It does use a variety of tools that you've programmed with, and it'll execute a task. There are different types of agents. We'll get into that. Hierarchical agents, which are a supervisor and worker pattern, or a sequential set of agents where a set of sequence needs to be followed, and the input of the output of one becomes the input of the next. So chaining of agents and things like that. Yeah, here, for instance, there could be compensation agents. You're planning compensation, allocations for your team. You want for it to take certain actions or come back with kind of recommendations based on a large set of data. And you need it to do some calculations. You need it to look up some past performance history of that your team members and so on. And you've provided it some guidance and for it to do certain things. So it is becoming more sophisticated. There are multiple steps involved here. So those kinds of things can be possible here, for instance. New hire onboarding is really great. Supports new hire employees in their initial days, company policies, tone, where can I find this or that? And so it can be like a concierge, if you will, answering a variety of questions around for new hires might have in any company. SR triage agent, we have seen a lot of examples of this too in our hackathon, really, really good ones that combine a variety of sort of background material around a service request and product manuals and product documentation to answer questions, or also even triage it for the product group. We could make a lot of use of it, for instance, when we are doing our triage of these weekly triage of complaints that come in, or SRs that come in. Essentially, if it can prioritize that based on even our past actions, based on the product documentation, based on, maybe even taking the customer, severity or the issue severity and the customer, context into account, then that provides a lot of help for your teams. Could be geographically distributed teams, could be a variety of combinations here. And you can make that as complex as you want. You can make it as simple as you want, but that tends to be very, very useful. So all of these can be assembled in the Agent Studio. Variety of all of these agents can be programmed. It's a no-code, low-code interface. We'll spend a lot of time in this. You can really take advantage of the data that's there within Fusion, the tools that we are providing, or you can extend it. So the beauty of this is it's completely extensible. You have creating your own tools or business objects and so on. You can do that, and you can add to the agents, and those are all possible too. Or you can call REST services. You can call, some API that's somewhere else that's doing something for you.